You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Hey there, welcome to episode 40, Rediscover Your Sexual Pleasure After Cancer with Tiffany Yelverton. This episode touches on some serious stuff, life transitional moments, and I want to remind you of my amazing tool, the Life Transition Workbook, available at stan.store/Michelle B. Cooper. As women, we face all kinds of challenges when it comes to sexuality. We're raised to not be overtly sexual. We're often discouraged from talking about what we want in the bedroom. And we're held to expectations about our appearance that can leave us feeling decidedly unsexy when we don't look just how society expects. When you add a cancer diagnosis and treatment layer to the pile, well, things can get even harder. And that's where my guest, Tiffany Yelverton, comes in. Tiffany was an earlier guest on the Rich Life Revolution podcast, where she shared her expertise as a sex coach on seizing your sexual confidence. Recently, Tiffany began researching and promoting her team's newest project, Sexy Survivors, and I wanted to have her on the podcast to talk about that. This is really important work. Sexy Survivors is designed for women who have completed cancer treatment. The program will fill a niche that is curiously absent from mainstream cancer treatment. Now, as a reminder, if you didn't listen to that previous episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tiffany. She is the founder and chief sexinista of Entice Me Soirees Incorporated and Sexy Survivors, based in Long Beach, California. She is known as the sex toys scientist and orgasm guru to her colleagues in the medical field. Tiffany inspires women to love their bodies and experience the orgasms of their dreams to eradicate the gender pleasure gap. Her goal is to educate and entice people to have more pleasurable, fulfilling, and healthy sex lives. As a master sex coach, she facilitates workshops, luxury retreats, private sexy soirees, and consultations. For more than a decade, Tiffany has helped men and women connect with themselves at their sexual core to feel sexier in and out of the bedroom. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Tiffany. It is so amazing to have you on the Rich Life Revolution.
Thank you for having me back. I love chatting with you.
Our episode that we previously recorded, I'll put the link in the show notes, was one of the episodes that we got incredible feedback on, the connection between feminine energy and money and all of that conversation that you and I had around like stepping into our power. And I always, in the top of my mind, is when you said, if you can't ask for what you want in bed, then how can you ask for what you want in money? And it was so simple. I was like, oh my God. So thank you so much. Today's conversation is a little bit different. You have taken a slight shift in your business, not a pivot, I wouldn't call it, not a redirection, but stepping more into your passion. And so I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about what's going on for you.
Yeah, it's definitely not a pivot. It's work that I've been doing for 10 years. I'm just really focused on it now. And it goes along with everything that I believe teaching women to love themselves and to love their bodies no matter what. And this is for female cancer survivors who have experienced chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, all those treatments that really do change your body, especially with breast, genital, and reproductive cancers. And it's called Sexy Survivors, and it's a part of Entice Me. And it's a 6-week program that we'll be marketing to actual cancer centers and hospitals to have them support and pay for the program instead of having the coaching program be reliant on the survivors having to fund it themselves.
That's amazing. So I love this for a variety of reasons. There's some people who are very close to me that are making their way through a cancer diagnosis. Not that this, my brother is your ideal client, but my brother was given a cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago, which I'll speak into a little bit. But also, my mom passed away from uterine cancer when I was 9.
So sorry. That's so young.
It is. I didn't know what kind of cancer my mom had, when I was little, like, it was the '70s. They didn't talk about stuff as much as we do now. It wasn't as open. And I remember in my 20s, I asked my dad, I was like, "I just wanna know, like, what kind of cancer?" And he said, Lady parts cancer." And I was like, "What does that mean?" But, again, it's a generational thing. I don't think he really knew. He was like, "I don't know, down there somewhere." And I was able to find out because I went to my doctor, and my doctor was able to actually, in Canada, we have cancer hospitals and they track all of this information. I didn't know that. And they were able to put me into a kind of like the genetic testing area. And so they could pull my mom's medical records. And that's where I found out it was uterine cancer, which spread to her colon. So this topic is close to my heart. And I think we've come a long way in the diagnosis part of, cancer and stuff and the treatment and stuff. And so more and more people do get to the other side of their diagnosis and they go into remission or what have you. And I think, like, I personally haven't had cancer, so this is not something I'm speaking to from my personal experience, but I can imagine that, as a woman, having a breast cancer or a uterine, cervical, ovarian, colon cancer, anything around that, probably any kind of cancer, the treatment process leaves you feeling very unsexy, to say the least.
Well, and it's often a part that society has told us is our femininity and that is who we are. We're the ones that can bear children. Well, if you have your uterus taken out, you can't. And so a lot of women really struggle with that, or that breasts are a part of us and we've had them for our whole lives, and that's what society says is feminine, is a curvy body. And then to have a double mastectomy takes that away from women. And so struggling with that, along with that treatment puts most women, chemo puts most women into a medical menopause. And a lot of doctors don't forewarn them that that's going to happen. And so losing their sex drive, their desire, and going through menopause symptoms is a whole nother piece. A lot of women then have to take hormone blockers, so they're even more suffering after treatment as well.
Yeah, it just must be devastating. It's just awful. And so this conversation I think is very important because, we stand for women taking a stand for their life, right? Creating their rich life, whatever that is for them. And I know for several of my close friends, their rich life is actually focusing on their health and wellness, their well being. So that's where I think this conversation with you and helping women see that even if you had something as devastating as a cancer diagnosis and maybe you're going through treatment, maybe you're on the other side of treatment, you still have an opportunity to create your rich life. So obviously you're in the process of creating your own rich life revolution, right? And why is this important to you? How did you come to this?
So I came to it when I first started networking for Entice Me, a woman I was sitting next to was a longtime stage 4 cancer survivor who had been told for years that she shouldn't still be alive. And she ran a lot of survivorship groups. And she said, I've never heard anyone speak as frankly and as honestly about sex as you do. And all the survivorship groups I run, the next to money, sex is what everybody is interested in getting back to their normal life. And no one talks about it. The doctors dismiss it. They're concerned with keeping the patient alive, but not that rich life quality of life afterwards. And so ever since then, I've been doing this work. And her name's Amy Reagan Strife, and I'm dedicating this program to her because she was such an inspiration to me in doing this. And, the stories that women have told me bring tears to my eyes about how their doctors dismiss them, how their husbands abandon them. I remember this one lady, we did a workshop, and she was early 30s, young mom, beautiful, had just had a double mastectomy. And she said her doctor, who was a female, which is shocking to me, said, "Oh, they're just breasts, get over it." And then her husband ended up just totally ignoring her diagnosis, and they ended up getting a divorce, which is not uncommon. Women are twice as likely to be divorced during their treatment than men are when they go through treatment. And it's appalling to me that that is happening.
Yeah, I think the whole process of a cancer diagnosis and then the treatment plan and all that stuff, it's shocking to everybody in the family. Everybody, has moves through it in their own way. But I think it's awesome that you're shining a light on this because that is a problem. I think, yeah, absolutely. Doctors are focused on keeping patients alive, but like alive for what? Right? Like alive for hell on earth kind of thing, like alive for a crappy existence after, alive for what? And that a little bit of a conversation I had with my brother. So my brother had a terminal cancer diagnosis 3 years ago, and they said, you've got 2 years, and we're on year three, so we're blessed. But part of it was, him making a decision about how he was going to experience life and taking the steps to live life the way he wanted to live it. So I remember my brother loves going to the gym, and that's been his routine forever, is to go to the gym in the morning. And part of his treatment puts his body into having an osteoporosis kind of effect, so brittle bones. And one of the doctors had said, like, no lifting anything heavy, like, don't take any chance that you're gonna break a bone. And he was like, "Well, does that mean I can't go to the gym?" And that doctor said, "No, you can't. You can't, like, no." And so he didn't. But then he was saying to me, "Now my mental health is suffering. So what's worse? Like, I'm gonna break a bone, or I'm depressed and anxious." And so we decided, with support of his main oncologist, that he would still go to the gym. And maybe he's only lifting 2-pound weights when he used to lift 50-pound weights or whatever. But he needed that. And so I think sometimes, yeah, the doctor is so concerned about keeping you alive, but then it's the life experience that is forgotten, right? And, all of the things that can happen along that journey. That's a shocking stat to me, that so many women have their marriage fall apart, within their diagnosis and treatment. That's awful. That's like adding insult upon injury kind of thing. These are the people that are supposed to be got your back, right? And now you don't have boobs, so you're out? That's not cool.
Right. And that's what we teach in Sexy Survivors, is that sex doesn't have to be what you thought it was always was, and it can look different and feel different and be just as great, if not better, when you love your body and you start to embrace everything that you've gone through and communicate those new needs with a partner to your partner, and really showing the women that they can still have that full rich life, that it doesn't have to end with the treatment because they feel bad. And with, you said, the several of the women this last week, right now I'm doing a case study to gather quantitative data to present to the cancer centers, and one of the women was explaining how the medication that she's on, the hormone blockers, is causing her so much pain in her joints. She can't do the things that she loves, like bicycling and everything, because she just hurts all the time. And one of the other participants has said, yeah, I was supposed to go on that medication. And I chose, when I looked at the side effects, not to do that because my quality of life is more important to me than the chance for the cancer to come back. Everybody has to make their own decisions. However, you have to look at what you want in your life. So most of these women are anywhere from about 2 to 3 months out of cancer treatment to 5 years. And they all are, what we find is about a year, 6 months to a year after treatment is when they really start to go, okay, I'm healed now, but now my life's not back to normal. And two of the women told me a year ago that they weren't suffering from anything that I was doing, that wasn't something that they need, but now they're coming running to me because they're like, oh, now I get it. Now everything's healed and it's settled down, and no, I don't feel as sexual as I used to. I don't feel sexy in my body, even though I look better maybe than I ever have. They just don't feel that sexuality and that drive. And also, the husbands or partners sometimes are too afraid to even engage because they don't want to hurt them. And so almost all the time women will be ready to get back to intimacy and sex, and their partners are like, oh no, I don't want to hurt you, you know I don't know what to do yet. And so it's educating both people.
So do you work with both the women and the men?
Right now it's the women, and then I give them, in the future we'll be adding on partners, but there is, in this test case study, activities that they're doing with their partners to reintroduce. And then, I can't teach everything in 6 weeks. So they'll have opportunity to come on retreats with me or work privately with me in the future. And then have also a community where they can keep in touch, because even after 2 weeks, they're already saying, this is what I've been missing. These women are exactly where I am. And they're from all over the world, but we're on Zoom and they're connecting and watching each other's videos and saying, I already feel like a part of something else and feel better about myself because I know I'm not alone.
Well, that's, I think, personally, like, those basic human needs, right? To feel seen, heard, and understood. That's why we need that community, that tribe, that group of people who get what we're going through or just have gone through, or even maybe they're one step ahead or one step behind or whatever, but we're all going through it at some point. And you can have extremely powerful transformation in that kind of environment, right? Especially when you're led by somebody like yourself who is so knowledgeable. And what I love about you is like the straight talking, no bullshit, like, say it as it is kind of thing. We don't need to flower it up or dance around stuff. Like, we can just talk about it. And I think that's really refreshing personally, and so needed, because I can't stand it when people talk around a subject. Like, just give me the straight goods kind of thing. Like, tell me what it is. And I saw a stat recently that said something like 93% or something of women will have some kind of cancer experience in their life. like in their lifetime. And that is crazy.
That is crazy.
I was sharing with my daughters, because again, one of my friends has a breast cancer diagnosis. And I was sharing with my daughters the other day, just about the importance of all this stuff, right? The self check, all the, things that you're supposed to do or whatever, because they were asking how she was doing. And I said, I'll be 55 this year. I feel like I don't know how I've made it this long without some kind of cancer. Like, I feel super lucky that I've gotten to this age and not have anything, because I know so many people who have. And I'm like, I'm really lucky, and I'm just going to keep focusing on doing what I need to do to keep myself healthy. And especially because I have a genetic disposition to it. But I get checked out and all that stuff. So if somebody is going through this now and they're listening to this podcast, right, that maybe they've had a diagnosis, or maybe they're in the middle of treatment, or maybe they're just finished treatment, or they're a year along or whatever, what can you share with them? Like, can you share with us a story of somebody who has had such a devastating thing happen, and on the other side, they've experienced this transformation?
Yeah, one of my, and you can find this on my Facebook. She's shared this story publicly. Is her name's Ingrid, and she had anal cancer, and she came to me. We met at an event or something, and she worked with me privately, and she was just so depressed and having such anxiety that she was afraid of what sex was going to feel like, because she had been single during her treatment, and she thought that she should be feeling so overjoyed that she was alive still. And instead, the anxiety and the depression was riddling her and making her, even unwilling to start dating. And we worked together and, worked on body confidence and getting to have pleasure back in the areas that had let her down, and that she had to learn to trust her body again. Because when you have an illness or a cancer or traumatic experience, you lose trust a lot of times in your body. So she had to trust her body that it could feel good instead of being painful in those areas. And now she's in a thriving relationship. Her and her partner are just so fun and so sexy. And he's written stuff on my Facebook also, so you can read that she thanks me all the time about how she got through that, and she attributes it to working with me, of how great her relationship is now, because she found somebody she wants to spend her life with, and the sex is amazing, and they are communicating, and they're just the most adorable couple. And it just makes me so happy to know that that's possible for people. Because, when you're shut down sexually, we've talked about this, that you shut down who you are as a woman, and it is a different power. And now she just radiates and wants to help everybody. And she's going to be, helping me sell the course to the medical groups, because she's such a believer and she knows what it did for her life.
That's so powerful. You mentioned, like, when you feel like your body let you down, or I know that a couple of conversations with my brother where he feels betrayed by his body. Honestly, he's out of the three, like, I have two siblings. Out of the three of us, he has lived the healthiest life, like the healthiest. My eldest brother was an alcoholic. He smokes, he like high stress. We always say, like, the three of us always say, if anybody was going to get cancer, we thought it would have been him. And it's my other brother who's like the healthiest. And he said, like, I feel betrayed. I feel betrayed by my body. Like, I can't, how has this happened? And I can imagine as a woman and having, a cancer diagnosis that involves your reproductive area or, breasts, well, anything. It doesn't, I don't care. It doesn't even matter because you're going to feel unsexy going through chemo or radiation and all that stuff. Doesn't even matter if it was like
No, it could be skin cancer. It can be anything, it affects your body.
totally, totally. And I can imagine that you could feel very betrayed and very let down by your body, especially if you were, one of those really healthy people who you thought you were looking after yourself. And so then, yeah, how do you trust? How do you let go? Not the same at all. But I remember after having my first baby, like I had 28 hours of labor and then a emergency cesarean and then a second surgery because I had internal bleeding. There's so much poking and prodding that goes on with your vagina, your like all of that area, your breasts, like they're trying to like move your breasts around so you can like feed the baby. Like I felt like an experiment. And sex was the last thing I wanted. Like I did not even think that I could ever experience any kind of pleasure again. And I imagine that it can be very similar. If you've got people poking and prodding you and sticking you with needles and radiation and all of these things, and then there's exams and there's all this stuff. And the medical people, I'm sure they try to be careful and compassionate and stuff, but sometimes it's like, get your legs up like this so we can get a better view of what's going on, right? And I always say, like, after you've had a baby, there's no dignity, like nothing, like it's all there for everybody to see, right? And I can imagine it says a similar, not the same, similar kind of experience for many people. And so how do you even begin to feel like you could go down that road and think that pleasure is even possible?
We use a lot of sensation touch and you expanding in all of the sensations of your body, the sight, sound, smells, and just starting to really feel your body because we touch ourselves all the time, but we forget to feel. And so making sure that you're getting 8 hugs a day, just even if you're hugging yourself, to start to feel and to bring the oxytocin back that helps you feel those energetically more confident and more at ease. And we do tapping, the EFT, we go through and clear those things out from the cellular level, those traumatic experiences. Because, yes, right now we're working with female cancer survivors, but it will go into male cancer survivors. It will be women with traumatic birth experiences who've had traumatic sexual experiences, all kinds of things. Sexy survivors is a whole scope. We just are choosing to start with this one piece, a niche area. But it is, women who have had miscarriages feel very similar also. They don't trust their body to do what it's meant to be. That And so there's so many traumatic experiences in life that we want to expand into in the future.
This is so good because, to be really honest, when I first heard you say sexy survivors, the place I went to, and this might be my personal lens, but I went to people who've experienced sexual assault. I have, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well that's really good because it's super challenging to have any kind of intimacy when you have experienced sexual trauma." And like I said, with the whole birth thing, like I found it really difficult and I didn't know how I was going to ever enjoy sex again with my husband. And it's not the same. And so I think that's a really great thing that you mentioned is like, it's okay that it's not the same. It's possible to still enjoy this, but it might look different.
And it is going to look different if you've had radiation or surgery that blocks your vaginal canal. Sex is going to be different because that's not even possible, or it's going to be too painful. And so finding new places on your body that are pleasurable that, there's multiple types of orgasms that you can have, that doesn't always have to be all the way into your vagina. That, that's the way women least orgasm. And so finding ways to experience those things together so that both people are satisfied and not in pain is important.
Yeah, and I can imagine, helping the partner to like how the survivor, let's call her the survivor, helping that person communicate to their partner that they're okay with this, right? That they're ready for this, that it might look different or it's going to look different or it might take more time or I don't know, whatever. To me, even that conversation, like I always remember, so my kids were all born in England. That's where I lived at the time. And I remember the midwife in England, everything's midwife based. And she came over to check on the baby and me. And she said, my husband was there when she was there. And she said, have you started having sex? And I was like, what? And he was like, he got up and left the room. He was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here right now. It was like this taboo topic, even though, like, obviously we had sex, we have a baby, and she's come here to make sure that, the baby's okay, I'm okay, everything's good. But he was just uncomfortable with the conversation. And given everything that I went through, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how long and like what's this going to be like. And that was just, having a baby. I can't even imagine if somebody has this diagnosis and the treatment and all of the stuff that they go through. There's a lot of pressure there, I would think.
On both people to get back to normalcy. And that's, what everybody wants, is to return to normal. But it's probably going to be a new normal, not necessarily exactly what it was before. But that doesn't mean it can't be better.
Yeah. My best friend always says normal is a setting on the washing machine.
Like that.
It's not a life thing. And I remember hearing her say that in a talk when I first met her and I was like, "Oh, this is a cool chick." I was like, "Okay, that's true, right? Like what's normal for me is not normal for somebody else and it's completely crazy for someone else." So that's amazing. And so you're working with like the cancer support groups? Do you work with people individually as well if they wanted to reach out to you?
Yes, please reach out to me. I'm doing a series of case study groups right now that are really low cost so that we can get this data. And then, I always work with people individually as well. We'll be doing some retreats in the future as well for cancer survivors. And if you're just looking to support, we're taking contributions to help us fund this work, because it is a lot of outreach. It is a lot of educating even the cancer support groups and advocating for this to be part of the treatment process and the ongoing. And so we're looking to raise funds to help support the travel that I'll be doing, the education, the time that it takes to get the corporate contracts with these hospitals as well.
And would it I imagine it would, but I wanna check with you before I assume. Would it help for if somebody is going through treatment or something like that, for them to say, like, "I would want something like this"?
Yes. And I'm looking for all kinds of connections, to program directors, to hospital administrators, to, nurse navigators, that I can bring this to their attention, because there are very few programs there. I found two specific hospitals on the East Coast here in the States that have their own programs. They're both East Coast, but this is a standalone program that can be taught at any hospital can bring it on, or any cancer center, alternative treatment centers. And we speak multiple languages, so it doesn't even have to be English speaking. We speak Spanish and Dutch. I have coaches that speak those languages, so we can run this group in multiple countries. And so just getting the connections helps me to survivor groups, to hospitals, to your oncologists, so that we can educate that this is important and necessary. Again, after money concerns, getting back to a normal sex life is what survivors are looking for most. And they don't talk about it, they don't share it with their care teams because they have maybe already been dismissed, or they feel ashamed, or they don't know how to bring it up.
Well, what if you don't even know that it's possible? You're sitting there and you're talking to your healthcare team or your people, and you don't even think that this is a possibility that you're gonna have a thriving sex life ever again. I think sometimes you can just write stuff off as like, "Well, that's not gonna be possible, so not even gonna talk about it."
Or you might think that it's nothing's going to be different, and then when you go to do it, your body reacts differently because you have, untapped traumas that have happened, and you think that, oh, it's going to be normal, everything's, that wasn't part of my body that had any treatment. So, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's nothing, it's going to just be normal, but then it doesn't always work out that way. And, I have one lady in our group that had cancer, and it was anal cancer as well as Ingrid. It's a different woman, but she has a lot of vaginal trauma from that surgery because they're very close together. The radiation affected her vaginal canal. She wasn't even ever told about dilators and pelvic floor physical therapy until she met me a few years ago. Things that could have helped along the way, but weren't even brought up. But she didn't even know that that was going to be an issue because that's not where her cancer was.
Yeah, and then I can imagine, I don't know, you have something like, let's say, ovarian cancer, which is, it's not an organ that you can touch or, we're not, within it's internal. You might think, well, that's not going to affect my ability to have sex, but maybe it does. Like you said, there can be trauma, related trauma.
And even just that emotional trauma, that your body has gone through something, that you're not the same woman that you used to be, that those emotional scars are just as prominent as physical scars.
Well, you are doing amazing work, and I have some great connections for you that I'm going to make for you. And we'll put all the contact details for you in the show notes because I know that there will be people listening to this. Like, I hope it inspires people. But I also hope that as women, we don't have to be a cancer survivor to advocate for this kind of thing, for this kind of support for other women. And for like, this is for everybody. This isn't, to me, this isn't just for women because if your partner is going through this, like you're going through it too. It's still affecting you. So we can be allies, I guess you'd call it, in this. And I think it's a really, just really great work that you're doing. And so I really encourage people to think about who you know that can pull this out into the world in a bigger way that you could connect Tiffany with. How can you advocate for this kind of support for women and their partners in their recovery process and their healing? Because it's not just about getting through the treatment, right? It's about, again, creating your rich life. What does that mean? Well, for sure, it would be great if it involves a thriving sex life. Like, let's get real. As much as we can be good on our own, but there's even that aspect. Maybe you don't have a partner. Maybe it's just you with yourself. You probably don't even know what to do with yourself anymore at this point. Maybe don't feel like there's any point. So I'm sure there's that aspect of it as well, right?
Yeah, we talk a lot about self pleasure and that connection. And, that's part of my passion too, is, just really connecting with your body and looking at your body and looking at yourself and touching yourself in new ways and finding out what works for you. And just on that note, that, like, no donation is too small. Send $1, send $10, all of that helps to go to support our cause and helps me to get on planes to go speak at organizations so that we can get this message out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you, the impact that you're creating in the world, and for taking this time to educate us on this really important topic.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting this out there for us.
So, we covered a lot in that conversation. And when it comes to expressing ourselves sexually as women, lots of crap is in the way. We're supposed to look sexy, but not act overly sexy. We're considered sexy at some points in our lives, but not others. And at some times of the month, and not others. We're so damn strong just for being able to navigate all this on the daily. Cancer treatments that change the mind, the body, or the body's ability to feel pleasure often leave women wondering about future intimacy and whether it's even possible for them anymore. I love this conversation with Tiffany. This is really important work. So if someone you know is going through cancer treatment and can't even imagine having sex, I want you to share this episode with them. They might not be ready for it now, but it's something to listen to in the future. If you're facing a cancer diagnosis, connecting with Tiffany is definitely an action step I would recommend. She is so knowledgeable and so well connected. The other option is to download my life transition workbook at stan.store/Michelle B. Cooper. I would love to hear your feedback. As always, slide on into those DMs on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Michelle B. Cooper is my handle. That's where you'll find me. And check out my next week's episode where we're talking about the stages of life transition. This is a really important episode. You'll want to be sure that you get all the information because we all go through life transition, every single one of us. And when you know yourself better and you know where you're at, you can navigate change even better. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.